And yeah, we're gonna hop right in here. So there we go with that. We're getting ready to live stream now on Facebook and welcome that community in as well. So here's what I would like to get started with. I'd like you to think about what a good leader means to you. Maybe it's someone, in fact, why don't you think of someone? Maybe it's someone that you've worked for, you've had the pleasure of doing business with. Maybe it's someone in your community, faith tradition. Maybe it's someone in politics that you respect. But think about why are they a leader? What is it about them that draws you to them? And we're going to come back to that person a couple times throughout our time together this morning, because I want you to focus on the characteristics that make someone a great leader. And most importantly, how can we be great leaders? And so as you're writing down those folks, I want you to think about the idea of leadership and what it means to you. What does it mean to be a great leader? In fact, when I say leader, what comes to mind? What are some of the characteristics that are present in a leader that you respect? Maybe even jot those down for yourself as well. Now, here's the thing. The title of our time together today is Be Like Salt, a well-seasoned approach to leadership. And when I say salt, what comes to mind? I know for me, it's a vital nutrient. It's something our bodies need. It's present everywhere around us in nature. It's something that adds flavor to our food. It's a preserver of food. In fact, even today, we still salt cure meats to preserve them. So salt, highly beneficial to us. But what happens if you use too much salt, right? It can lead to high blood pressure, amongst many other problems. And so everything in nature, everything around us has to be well moderated. Leadership's no different. Leadership's all about moderation, knowing what our people need and when they need it. Do you know that the word salt actually comes from the word salary actually comes as a derivative from the word salt? In fact, salt was so valuable in olden times. There are records of people, including some Roman troops, being paid in salt because it was so valuable. If you're a bit of a history buff, the Mayan Empire throughout South America founded on the movement and control of the salt mines and salt deliveries throughout the empire and in and out of other nations. Salt was worth more than gold, in fact, throughout history. And so as we embark on our journey today, I'm going to make one guarantee to you. And that's that in our time together, you are going to get some nuggets that you can implement right away, and the opportunity to continue in these studies. Now, let me tell you first how this whole program came to be. I mean, we're launching this live. This is the first time. I'm so excited. For 2 weeks now, I kept looking at June 5th at 11 a.m. And I even had some people tell me, Ed, you can't launch something this fast. I said, watch me. And so let me tell you a little bit about how all this came to be. You see, I've been studying leadership and coaching leaders for a number of years now. And I always have a good leadership book that I'm working on because there are so many fascinating people that have written about leadership and what it takes to be a leader. But here's how Be Like Salt came together. Back over the wintertime, I was sitting at church, and one of the readings was about the value of salt. And the priest then started to talk during his sermon about the value of salt and how salt has enriched our lives over the years. And he talked about the value of it during biblical times. And sitting there in the pew listening to this, I kind of got this thunderbolt, right? And it basically said to me, Ed, leaders need to be like salt. They need to be valuable to their people. I said, all right, God, I get it. And I sat on that idea for a few days, but it just kept coming back and coming back to me. And I was flipping channels then, about a month after that, and I see celebrity chef Robert Irvine, and he's on a quest to learn about the value of salt throughout history. And I said, all right, God, I got it. I'm supposed to do something with this idea. And so I started to make notes on the things that I've learned through my studies and through my coaching of leaders. And so I believe that being like salt means 4 things. And we're going to talk about those 4 things today. I believe it means that we need to be of service to our people. We're going to dive into that. I believe it means that we need to appreciate and show appreciation to our people. That we need to listen to them. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to trust them. Those are the foundations of being like salt: service, appreciation, leadership, and trust. In the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about those 4 things and what establishing those 4 things in your bag of tricks can really mean to you and your self-development. Because after all, we are all leaders. Some of you might be saying, oh, Ed, I don't lead anybody. Yes, you do. You lead yourself. If you have a significant other, you have children, you're leading your family. Perhaps you serve on not-for-profit boards. You're a leader for that not-for-profit entity. And certainly, you're probably leading in your workplace, whether you know it or not. Whether you have a leadership title, perhaps you are a informal leader in your group. People come to you for advice. Maybe you're an informal leader within your group of friends. We all have leadership potential. I do not subscribe to the notion that leaders are born and not made. Are some leaders born? Absolutely. Some people have that it factor. For the rest of us, we've got to work hard at it. But I'm here to tell you it's possible. And I'm going to show you the way today. Did you know, going back to my story about how this all came about, I started to do a little bit of research. The Bible mentions salt 15 times. Old Testament, New Testament, salt. And each time it talks about how valuable salt is. In fact, this whole series, this whole coaching program came about because I wrote an article about being like salt. It was published on Forbes.com and it got great fanfare. People wrote me and said, Ed, love this idea, love this analogy, love how you've built this in. And that's when I knew I kind of had a tiger by the tail, that there was something to this idea that through service, appreciation, listening, and trust, we can set the foundation of being a solid leader for our people. And so as I was pulling this together, what I realized was that salt is a balance, right? We mentioned it, that too much salt can cause health problems. We see that in nature as well. The ocean is teeming with wildlife. They say it's the last great frontier, right? To really understand the depths of the ocean. And so many creatures live in the ocean and they need that salinity to survive. But what if we as humans tried to drink salt water? Results not going to be so good, right? And then, of course, you have the Dead Sea. Why is the Dead Sea dead? Too much salt. So you see, even as leaders, when we apply leadership principles, they have to be in the right proportions. They have to be fine-tuned to what our people need at a given point in time. In fact, table etiquette tells us that we should never season our food until we've tasted it, right? To be sure that it's to our liking. Let's not oversalt something, because oversalting it makes the taste actually go away. Whereas little pinches of salt brings all the flavor out. That's what we're called to do as leaders, to bring the flavor in our people out. That's what being like salt is really all about. Now let's talk about the 4 tenets. When I think about service, so much has been written about being a servant leader. And it's all good, don't get me wrong. But what does it really mean to be a servant leader? Let me tell you a story. Maybe some of you have heard it, but bear with me anyway. There's a little boy and he's walking along the beach. And the tide has gone out. And a bunch of starfish have been stranded along the beach. Now, if you know anything about starfish, they don't move so fast. And they also can't live outside of water. And there's probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of these starfish stranded on the beach. And so as this little boy's walking along, he's picking them up and he's throwing them back into the ocean, right? And he just keeps doing it and doing it. And he's having fun doing it. Meanwhile, walking the other way is an older man. And he's watching this boy and he's perplexed. And so as they're coming together along the coastline, the old man stops the boy and he says, "Son, what are you doing?" He says, I'm making a difference. And the old man says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, if I don't throw these starfish back in the ocean, they're going to die." And the old man says, "Son, look, there's hundreds, maybe 1,000 of them. You can't possibly make a difference." The little boy just smiled and he picked up another starfish and threw it back into the ocean and said, "I just made a difference for that one." It was then that the old man knew that making a difference doesn't mean making a difference for the masses. It's important as leaders that we change our people one life at a time. I get so frustrated when I'm working with business owners and they'll say, "Well, Ed, we can't implement that policy because it wouldn't be fair to everyone in our workforce." And I say, so we're not going to do the right thing for the few because it's not the right thing for everybody? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now, I'm not saying that we play favorites. That's not what I'm saying at all. Well, let's think about the whole idea of remote work. Up until the pandemic, there were many businesses that absolutely refused to do any kind of remote work. And usually it came back to, well, I've got machine operators and they can't work from home. So that means that nobody else should be able to work from home. It's not fair. Okay, but let me put it in these terms. When I sign up and I've got the skill set to be a machine operator, I know that I have to be in front of my machine to make it run. But if I sign up to be a salesperson, am I equally effective on the road with the customers as being in front of a Zoom meeting perhaps, or being on the phone? Do I need to be at my desk to be every bit as effective? Probably not. And see, that's where businesses make the mistake with so many of their leadership decisions. They're trying to make leadership decisions to serve everybody. And oftentimes through those, they're not serving anybody. Go back to the starfish. How do we make a difference one person at a time? That's our calling as leaders. How do we make a difference one person at a time? Now, some of you are probably thinking, gosh, Ed, if I'm in a company with hundreds of people and I do even one a day, it could take me several years to make a difference. Obviously, there are things that you are going to do that are going to be of service to many people. My message to you is, though, make a difference in your people. That's what we are called to do. And we do that through service to our people, understanding what they need to be the best that they can be. The little boy throwing the starfish back into the ocean was simply giving them a helping hand, right? They would die in the time it would take them to crawl back into the surf. He was just giving them a helping hand. Many times that's all our people need, is that helping hand. Do we give it to them? Do we reach out our hand and say, I'm here to help you? That's my job, being the leader. If you can establish enough of a rapport with your people that they know you have their back, they will run through brick walls to serve you and to follow you. Now, unfortunately, there are cases of really bad leaders. Well, let me rephrase that. Of really good leaders who did bad things. Think of Jim Jones. Had a religious community down in Guyana, and was brainwashing his people, and eventually, tragically, convinced them that the only way out of the oppression they were feeling was to commit mass suicide. Was he a leader? Absolutely he was. He had hundreds and hundreds of followers. In fact, people so dedicated to him that they were willing to take their own lives because he requested that they do it. That's not being a true leader, obviously. Being a true leader means that we are willing to be there with our people, to give them that helping hand, to go into battle with them, side by side, not to sit on our white horse at the back of the lines and ordering them to go do things we might not otherwise do ourselves. Let's move on to appreciation. This one, I think, is probably the easiest principle to master, and yet so many people get it wrong. How do we appreciate our people? Is it a simple thank you? Is that all our people need? Maybe. I've had managers tell me, why should I thank my people? They get a paycheck every Friday. That's their thank you. No, come on now. People need and crave more than that. I had a manager early on in my career, and he was a nice guy. Don't get me wrong, very nice guy. But his attempts at appreciation were very shallow. He would ask how you were doing, but really wouldn't listen when you were responding to him. Every day he made a point to come through the office. Good morning, good morning. He said good morning to every single person, but it was so mechanical that it seemed insincere. And I don't know that it really was insincere, but that's how he came across. And so when I think about how and why we need to appreciate our people, I think it's through individualized connections. Are you starting to hear the theme? We talked about being of service to one so that we can be of service to many. Appreciate one so that we can appreciate many. I was just speaking to someone yesterday, in fact, and he was telling me how he had recently given his staff a bonus. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic. They were working extra hours, just extra stress, and he thought, I'm going to reward them. gave an across-the-board one-time bonus of $1,500. Now, for many people, that was almost as much as they would earn in a week. And as you might suspect, no good deed goes unpunished. Many people didn't even respond to say thank you. But there were a number of people who said that they were insulted, that they felt that they deserved more. And I'm so disheartened by that. But there's a message here, and here's what I'm thinking. It's not just that these people are greedy. It's not that they are unappreciative. But what it tells me is that there's not a connection between the leader and his people at that point in time. And so his act of appreciation was not well received. There's a great book out there. The author's name is Jack Mitchell. And it's called Hug Your People. It's a quick read. It's an easy read. And the thing about it is there's nothing in the book that's what I would call rocket science. You know, you're probably not going to read this book and say, oh, wow, Ed, there was full of aha moments. For me, the aha moment when I read that book years ago is how simple appreciation really is. You see, what Mr. Mitchell talks about in his book is he's a business owner, and he has a string of high-end retail establishments. They're, high-end clothing for business people. And so he's very customer service focused. In fact, he has a subsequent book called Hug Your Customers as well. But let's focus on hugging his people. Obviously, it's a figurative term. We can get in a lot of trouble if we walk around hugging our people all day, every day. But what he talks about in that book is that you have to know what your people want in terms of showing them appreciation. So maybe you've got a dad in your work group and his kid plays travel ball. And so every weekend he's on the road. Maybe as a show of appreciation, you throw him a gas card every now and then to take some of that burden off of him. You got Sue over there. Her birthday's coming up, and around her desk, she has lots of pictures of daisies. Might tell you that she loves daisies, right? So how about she gets a bouquet of daisies on her birthday? Or Steve, who's a certified chocoholic. Maybe he should get a basket of chocolate for his birthday or for doing something great in the workplace. Appreciation is simple. It really is. But how often are we truly sincere in how we show our appreciation to our people? You see, saying good job that's only part of it. How we say good job through our sincerity and through perhaps that small monetary gift means all the world. Do you think that it's out of any of your budgets to reward your people with a $15, a $20 appreciation card or gift in some way, shape, or form every now and then? I don't think so. In fact, I started off with the story about the starfish. I actually wear a starfish lapel pin when I give certain talks because I love that story. It means that much to me. And that little starfish reminds me that I need to make a difference. One of my last in-house assignments, I had the HR team together, and we were going through a lot of acquisitions, and we were just getting stretched thin. And I had gotten them all these starfish pins, and I gave them out, and I told the story. And I said, guys, I know times are tough. We're stressed right now. But I want you to know we are making a difference in the future of this firm. Now, these little pins only cost about $8 a piece. I had a team of 6 or 7 at the time. So what are we talking? Less than $100. There were wet eyes in the room. There were smiles. These folks wore these little starfish pins on their lapels, on their ID badges. It was amazing what that did. Now, I don't think I'm an appreciation genius, but I share that story to tell you that it's all about the sincerity. I really did mean that they were making a difference, that our department was making a difference in the future of the firm. And I wanted to let them know that I cared about them and that I appreciated their extra efforts. So often I hear, oh, we don't have a budget for appreciation dollars. How can you not? How can you not have just a little something set aside? Now let's go to the opposite. Let's go to the extreme case. I was working with a small business a little while back, and their owner was just an incredible guy, very, very generous. And he told me how he had a salesperson who was just having a killer year and had actually postponed a couple of family vacations simply because of things going on and trying to take care of the customer. And finally, the owner looked at him and said, look, I appreciate your dedication and our customers appreciate your dedication, but you need to take a vacation. And of course, the man was like, well, but, he said, no, you need to take a vacation. I want you out of here. I want you to go enjoy time with your family. He actually paid for his top salesman and his family to go on an all expenses paid cruise vacation. Now that's high ticket, right? You're talking about the man, his wife, I think they had 2 kids, airfare, everything covered by the owner. But that was the reward met the level of recognition. Just like the punishment fits the crime, the reward and the recognition has to pair up with the achievement. This guy had just blown his sales numbers out and went above and beyond to take care of the customers after the sale. And this business owner wanted to recognize that. He truly appreciated his people. If we are going to be salty leaders, we need to learn how to appreciate our people, but more importantly, how to show that appreciation sincerely. Now let's talk about listening. Some people think they're great listeners. Others recognize that listening is an active event, that it's something that has to happen between 2 people for communication to take place. So again, I want to tell you a story, and I want you to give me the answer in the chat room. So there's Don the butcher. Don is 5'11". He's got a waist of 36 inches around. He's 45 years old. What does he weigh? Go ahead and think about that for a moment. Throw it in the chat box for me. What does he weigh? See a couple things coming in, not enough information. I promise this is not a trick question. Impossible to calculate. And then there's some stabs here. 200 pounds, 190 if he's lean, 300. Okay, so I just gave you a test on listening. I didn't ask you how much Don the butcher weighed. I asked you, what does he weigh? He weighs meat. He's a butcher, okay? Now, some of you are probably groaning at that, okay? But it does come back to listening, does it not? Do we hear what someone else is trying to tell us? Do we truly hear it? Now, okay, maybe that is a bit of a trick question there, or a trick story, excuse me, but I think it illustrates the point. I started giving you measurements and his height, and so right away you went to, oh, it's got to be about his weight. How often do we do that when we're interacting with people? How often do we mentally tune out from what they're saying because we're preparing our response? There's a great story out there. I learned it early on in my career, and it served me well. It's called the Heinz Story. And it's fictitious, but bear with me for a moment. So you have the Heinz Lumber Company. And Mr. Heinz, the owner, was looking to promote someone to be his vice president, essentially be his wing person, right? And after much consideration, he actually gave the position. He had two people that were really kind of up there and in the running. And he actually awarded the promotion to the person that had less tenure with the firm. And so the gentleman who was passed over said, "Mr. Heinz, may I have some time with you? I'd like to know why I was passed over. I've been here 30 years. I've been faithful to you." And Mr. Heinz, rather than answering him, says, "Did we get a load of lumber in today?" And the man says, "Let me go check." He comes back and says, "Yep, got a load of lumber today, 300 boards." And Mr. Heinz says, "What track did it come on, and has it been processed yet?" Man says, "Let me go check." Goes off, comes back, came in on track 3, and it's 1,000 board feet of wood. And Mr. Heinz says, "Okay, great. And what are we going to retail that for? What's it going out in the market for?" Once again, the gentleman leaves, comes back. "Oh, it's going to retail for $5,000. Mr. Heinz says, "Okay, great, thanks. Hey, do me a favor. Why don't you go over there, sit in the other room, but leave the door open so that you can hear what's going on." And so Mr. Heinz calls in Patty, who he had given the promotion to. So she comes in, and he says, "Patty, did we get any lumber shipments in today?" She says, let me go check on that, and I'll be right back." So she leaves. She comes back, and she says, "Mr. Heinz, yeah, we got in a load of lumber. It came in on track 3. 1,000 board feet, about 300 hunks of wood. We've got, it already is in process. We're estimating that it's going to retail for about $5,000. He says, "Great, thanks, Patty." Calls the first gentleman in and said, "Do you know why now I selected Patty?" You see, when we listen, we have to listen between the lines. What does someone really mean when they ask us a question? What are they really looking for? How much information? Some might argue, well, Patty gave him too much information. Others would argue, yeah, the first guy didn't give enough information. What was Mr. Heinz really looking for? You see, listening is a skill that the average person believes they do well, but that the average person really stinks at. So we have to listen. Listening is crucial in any relationship that we want to maintain. Certainly, you know this in your family life. Listening is crucial to being in a family and having common goals as a family. Listening is crucial in your friend circle so that you can be there when they need you to listen or perhaps offer some advice to them. But listening is hard. That's why they call it an active skill. We cannot be a leader if we don't listen to our people. Now, let me tell you this. Does that mean that we should listen to our critics? Sometimes. You see, we have to give the critics the time they deserve, which is honestly very, very little. I am getting a alert that I need to upload some new software update, excuse me there. So critics deserve very little time. And so what I suggest people do when they say, "Yeah, I can't stop listening to these people and they're in my head now," I say, okay, would you take a compliment from this same person? Would you ask this person for advice? And probably the most importantly, and third, do you respect this person? You see, depending on the answers to those questions, we may not need to take that criticism because we can't please everyone all the time. And leaders that attempt to do so will fail and usually do. They crash and burn. They get so stressed over attempting to please everybody that they end up pleasing no one because they're listening to everything come in and they try to take it all on. We have to listen to our people and then decide on a course of action that's going to have the most impact for our people and for our business. That's what leaders do. So when it comes to listening, do you know what your people really want? Do you know what they want out of you? Do you know what they want out of their employment time with your organization? When's the last time you asked them? I recall I had spent some time with an accounting firm. And this was back in the early days of the smartphones. And our recruiters would come back saying, that this other accounting firm across town, they're offering free smartphones to their people. And the new college grads, they love that. And we can't compete with that. And I said, well, why don't we give smartphones to all of our people? Oh, but our benefit package is worth more. And we're actually starting them out at a little bit higher salary. And they don't want to hear this. These kids don't get this. And I said, so let me get something straight. Our benefits are better, which means we're paying more for them. We're paying a higher salary than our competition. But yet our competition is going with a one-time expense and upgrading people to a smartphone. And they're spending less than us and getting the good candidates. And my recruiter said, yeah, that's the problem. I said, so why aren't we doing it? Well, and then they just stared at me. They weren't listening to what candidates were telling them. They were so stuck in our way is better, what we have is better, and trying to sell them on that they weren't listening to what the candidates really wanted. Now, as silly as it sounds, if people want something like a smartphone and we can pay them less because they want the smartphone, then go ahead and do it. I have business owners all the time, and they frustrate me because they tell me how great their benefits are, and yet they can't recruit people and they lose people because folks are going elsewhere for more money. Okay, then listen to what those folks are telling you. They value money over the benefits. Now, maybe you disagree with that. Okay, it's okay to disagree with that, but do so at your own peril. Your candidates, your employees are telling you what's important to them. You have to listen. And so I think one of my favorite stories about listening comes back to really communication in general. I worked with a well-known client. I'm not gonna name them to protect the guilty, but I guarantee you've got their products in your home. They were having terrible communication challenges, and their employee opinion survey results were tanking. And so they brought me in to work on this, and I couldn't figure out at first what the problem was because they had all kinds of ways of communicating. They had town hall meetings. They had one-on-ones with supervisors. They had a lunchroom that had a whole wall dedicated to the latest company financials and open book metrics. Gosh, what is really going on here? And so I decided I'm going to attend a few of these meetings. And so I attended the next town hall meeting, and the plant manager would get up and she would give a kind of a State of the Union address, right? And so she's up there, she's talking about different inventory, and then she gets to dollars, to revenues. And this company was German owned, although the plant I was working with was here in the States. And this plant manager decides to get up and she starts talking about revenues in terms of euros. We're up, X millions of euros. We've shipped X millions of euros worth of product, euros. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know what the going conversion rate is between euros and US dollars. Complete communication mishap, right? If you tell me we're up 2 million euros, obviously we're up, so that's good, but I don't know how up we are because in my head, I can't do that conversion. I don't know what the exchange rate is. And so you might say, well, Ed, what does this have to do with listening? Well, people were telling the managers, the supervisors, her as the plant manager, that communication was a problem, and they just weren't listening enough to ask the right questions. Listening, third tenet of being a salty leader and a critical one. Now, let's get down to trust. They say trust is earned, and yet So many of us as leaders, we think that because we get the stripe, that leader stripe on our shoulder, that we should be trusted. No, we've got to earn that trust. But the same is not necessarily true of our people. This is an odd dichotomy, and some argue with me on this, and that's okay. I love a healthy debate as much as the next person. I believe that we need to trust our people from the start. Here's why. So you run an ad campaign to recruit people to your place of business. And you go through the phone screens and the live screens and interviews, the whole bit, and you whittle it down, right? And you finally reach out and you want to shake that candidate's hand. Okay, in exchange, what you've done is engaged in the age-old exchange of, I will pay you X and provide this working environment for you in exchange for you to bring your talents to me and drive results. It's a very simple equation. Now, where does trust come in? When we start to micromanage those folks. When we feel like we need reports out of them on a daily basis. When we've got to have meeting status updates constantly. Things that get in the way of our people being productive. Last fall, I was speaking at the Louisiana State Conference for the Society for Human Resources Professionals. And the topic was on HR strategy. But we sort of veered off course because we got to talking about remote work. Now, mind you, this is pre-pandemic, right? I actually had a number of HR people raise their hands and tell me, Ed, I'm against remote work. I said, okay, we need to spend some time on this because I'm a remote work proponent. I mean, I've been working remotely for almost 20 years now. And I said, so tell me, why are you against remote work? And some of them told me stories that I mentioned earlier with you where, well, we can't do it for all of our people, so we're not doing it for any. Okay, great. That's another topic. But too many people, and this is so disheartening, too many people said to me, Ed, I won't know if they're working. I can't trust them to actually be working. And I just looked at the audience with some dismay. Because my view is, why would I hire someone to work with me, for me, in my organization if they couldn't be trusted? To me, it's a mind-blowing problem. Why would I want to establish a relationship with you that involves me rewarding you with money and benefits and a great working environment in exchange for your time, talent, efforts, if I didn't trust you? It just didn't make any sense to me. And as the pandemic hit and people were forced to work from home, all of a sudden we start to see people are more productive. There's not as many interruptions. They can go get a cup of coffee in their kitchen, be back in front of their laptop, and they didn't have to pass 5 coworkers who want to talk about the game the night before or the latest movie that they watched. There's no drop-ins at the cubicle, right? Unfortunately, some companies still don't trust their people. And I've heard stories about companies requiring people to check in at periodic times to prove they're working. And worse yet, I've heard companies who have infiltrated the cameras on their employees' laptops, because it is, after all, a company laptop, and it snaps a picture periodically to ensure the person is there and working. You have got to be kidding me. Not only do I believe that's a huge privacy violation, and there could be legal issues around that, but what a terrible show of and lack of trust in your people to do the right thing. We hire people for results, not to give us 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. No, and I'll debate anyone over that. We hire people to drive business results. And in order to do that, we must train them well, give them the tools that they need, and then trust them to get it done. Now, when they're not getting it done, maybe we need to go back to coaching, and God forbid, maybe we have to go to discipline. but we have to trust our people. Show me an environment where trust is lacking, and I will show you an environment where business results are lacking, where turnover is high, productivity is low, and recruiting is a near impossibility. Trust goes that far. Now, that doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable, and it doesn't mean that people aren't going to make mistakes. But here's what I believe the perfect tenet of trust really means. Because people are going to make mistakes. Remember to look for their good intentions. Did the person intentionally try to blow the big deal with the new customer? Probably not. Is it a learning opportunity? Yes. Let's sit down with them and figure out how we can keep them from making that same mistake again. That's a sign of true leadership. Looking for their good intentions, figuring out what they were attempting to do, coaching them through so they get better results the next time. That's what trust is really all about. So that's SALT: service, appreciation, listening, trust. But what happens if we don't exhibit those behaviors? I had a client call me. It was a small credit union, and they were in some legal trouble because of the actions of a previous CEO. And so they had terminated that individual and promoted their CFO as an interim CEO. Now, the problem was she was having trouble moving out of that CFO, very technical role and being in the nitty-gritty numbers to managing the entire workforce and the membership and everything that the credit union required. And so the board of directors called me and said, Ed, we'd like you to come in and look at our processes and everything that's going on here. But more importantly, we really would like you to work with our CEO. Now, I asked them, what happens if I'm not successful? They said, well, we're going to have to terminate her and bring in a new CEO. We like her. We think she's got potential. But, we recognize where she's at now is not the right spot. Her pay was $170,000 a year. So what did it mean to her to learn how to be a good leader? It meant $170,000 a year. Because the likelihood that she would get another CEO opportunity at a financial institution would be slim, right? She could probably get another CFO job for 130, let's say 140, but she really wanted to make that leap. So we worked together for 4 months. We pounded away at the SALT principles. And guess what? She came out the other side. Excuse me. It is allergy season in central Pennsylvania. She came out the other side with a team more dedicated than ever to supporting her and the needs of the organization. We saw membership go up. We saw their turnover go down. We saw them, instead of scrambling to get applicants, people wanting to come to work for this organization. Most importantly, her relationship with the board of directors was fixed. She was driving the results that the board of directors expected. And she was successfully able to lead them out of the regulatory issues they had been facing and back into the clear with the federal regulators so they can offer a full range of services to their members. That's the power of being salty. Now, the problem is there are some people that aren't going to move on it, right? I think about a business owner who came to me and he said, Ed, my management team will not let me get anything done. They keep coming back to me for every little thing. Think about the Heinz Story, okay? And he says, I need you to help them. I said, great, I'm happy to help them. And we talked through it, and then the pandemic hit. And he said, oh, Ed, I don't want to make any investments in my people now. I said, okay, tell me about that. You still have the issue. Oh, yeah, but I'm scared to make that investment right now. So here we are, at least here in central Pennsylvania, we're starting to ease out of some of the pandemic restrictions. And this man is still sitting on his hands. He's still experiencing the daily frustration of having a management team that will not make decisions without his input, that are almost afraid to take initiative. And from what I've seen, I don't believe it's this business owner's lack of leadership or lack of trust in his people. It's that his people have not been given the skill set to be leaders in their own right. And so here he is still stuck in not being able to grow his business and take on new initiatives because he's so bogged down with these managers who won't take leadership initiative. There's the danger in not applying leadership principles to ourselves and to our people. And so if you're missing one of the pieces of salt, I don't believe you can be an effective leader. And there are lots of great leadership books out there on leadership skills, things that you can do to improve yourself, and they're all great. I've come to believe, though, that these 4 tenets, the 4 things we talked about today, are critical, and that you cannot stand as a leader if you have not mastered those 4. So some of you are asking, well, this is great, Ed. This has been a great overview, and you give me some great stories, and what comes next? So as I've been unveiling this Be Like Salt initiative, I'm putting together the first coaching group right now. You can get my coaching in a one-on-one and group environment simultaneously. So I'm giving you this offer right now to get in truly on the ground floor as I put this first group together. Now, what's in it for you to be part of the first group, right? A lot. I want you to go back to the question I asked you at the beginning. Who's a great leader that you admire? And I want you to think about what your life would be like if you were able to get the skill set to be the leader that person would be. Would it put more money in your pocket? Would it get you a promotion? Would it mean getting out of a dead-end job, moving to a better organization? What would it mean to you if you were able to master the SALT principles and become the leader you were meant to be? I have the roadmap to make that happen for you. But the one thing I can't do is take the next step for you. Honestly, only you can do that. And so if you are interested in being like salt and becoming a salty leader, I encourage you right now, drop me an email, ed@edcrow.com, and that's edkrow.com. And in the title, just put, I want to be salty. And we'll set up a time to chat. Or you can go to my website, edcrow.com, and right there on the homepage is a button that says, I want to talk to Ed. And again, plug in there. You've got a choice of times, no obligation to chat about what this program can do for you. It's 4 months, about an hour a week. Not a huge time commitment, but a commitment nonetheless. So if you're sitting here saying, Ed, I don't have time for 1 hour a week, then you're probably not yet committed to improving your well-being. Because people that say, I don't have the time, really are saying, I'm not willing to make the time. Those that want to change always find a way to change. And so the reason that I booked the initial call is to make sure that we're right for each other, that you are ready to make the change, because I only want to work with people who are ready to change their professional lives and become the leaders they were meant to be. Because you see, I like to be successful, and I want to work with people that want to be successful, because people that want to be successful can be successful. So here are my parting thoughts. If we can be like salt, if we can master those salty techniques and be just the right amount of flavor in our people's lives, we can experience success like perhaps we've only dreamed of or thought was only reserved for other people. I promise you that. Regardless of the kind of position or job you have now, if you can become a salty leader, it's going to lead to some of the most satisfying experiences you can imagine. And yes, likely some extra money in your pocket through the promotions or increased job opportunities that you are going to see through being a great leader. Don't miss this opportunity. I've got special rates for this first group. I don't want you to miss out on that. So if you're ready to be a salty leader, again, shoot me an email and say, I want to be like Salt. We'll schedule some time and we'll get rolling. Connect with me online through my website, again, edcrow.com, and we can schedule a time there. But take action today. Don't wait. The more that we wait, the less likely it is we're going to make the changes in our lives that we need to make. And in a practical note, I'm only taking a handful of people into this first group. And so I don't want you to miss out and be one of those folks who waited a few days, waited a week, and I've already booked up the first group. Eventually, yes, I will run multiple groups. This first one, we're going to do a lot of learning together. And my time with you is going to be more intense. I promise you so much value. So if you're ready to be salty, drop me a line. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to working with you. Let's make you the salty leader you were meant to be. Thanks and take care.